No one survives here without the rules. And tonight, I learned why the hard way. The building was run down. And that I should expect nothing more than creaking floors and bad coffee. But the first thing that caught my attention wasn't the faded carpet. Or the flickering neon sign outside. It was the note taped to the door of room 6. The paper was yellowed and curling at the edges. Ink smudged. As if from rain. Or tears. It read simply, "Do not lock the door from inside. Never leave a light on past 2 a.m. I stared at it. Assuming it was some leftover prank from a previous guest. Or maybe the hotel's way of scaring away lazy vandals. I laughed to myself. Rules in a motel? Really? Yet there was something about the way the paper fluttered in the warm, stagnant hallway air. Something almost deliberate. As if it had been waiting for me to notice. The hallway was narrow and dim. Lined with peeling wallpaper. Doors with numbers long since dulled by years of cleaning. The smell of old carpet mingled with a faint, metallic scent I couldn't name. Every step I took made the floor groan. A low, persistent moan. Far too alive for an empty building. I had arrived late. The sky outside was heavy with storm clouds. The motel was nearly deserted. A single receptionist sat behind a dusty counter. Eyes hidden behind glasses smudged with fingerprints. When I asked about the rules, she shrugged. Muttering something about old stories and guests who never understood. She didn't smile. She didn't even glance at the note. Instead, she turned back to her ledger, scratching her pen in a rhythm that echoed through the empty lobby. The door to room 6 was just like any other. Chipped paint. A tarnished brass handle. A key that rattled in its lock. Yet the note made me pause. My fingers hovered over the metal. Part of me wanted to disregard it. To treat it as a silly superstition. But another part, a deeper, quieter instinct, told me to listen. I slipped the key into the lock. Turned it slowly. Trying not to think about the note. As soon as the door clicked open, a chill swept out. Curling around my ankles like smoke. Inside, the room smelled of mildew, dust. And a faint, underlying metallic tang. One that made my stomach twist. The air was heavy. Unnaturally still. Though the curtain flapped gently against the window from a draft I couldn't feel. The furniture was old. But neatly arranged. On the bedside table sat a small lamp. Bare bulb. That's when I noticed it. Another note. Tucked under the lampshade. In the same handwriting, the words were short. Sharp, if the lights stay on past 2 a.m., the walls will watch. I chuckled. Though the laugh came out hollow. The storm outside rattled the windows. A low rumble. Synced with the groaning floorboards. I turned on the light anyway. Flicking the switch as if daring the room to notice. And then I felt it. The first small, almost imperceptible shiver crawling up my spine. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to hesitate. Stretching just a fraction longer than they should have. As though reluctant to settle. I unpacked quickly. Trying to ignore the unease growing like a cold knot in my stomach. Outside, the wind hissed. I could hear rain beginning to drum against the roof. Like fists striking a coffin. The clock on the nightstand ticked in a steady, almost too loud rhythm. Counting down to a time I wasn't sure I wanted to reach. Curiosity got the better of me. I had to know. If this was all a prank. Or if the stories about room 6 were true. I tiptoed to the door, listening. Half expecting the receptionist to appear out of nowhere. To scold me for touching the lock. Nothing moved in the hall. Nothing. Except the shadows. They seemed thicker near the edges of my vision. Pulling along the walls. Creeping slowly toward the door. Like ink in water. I blinked. Shook my head. Told myself it was just my imagination. But then the whisper came. At first. Soft. Barely audible over the storm, "Do not lock it." My heart stuttered. I hadn't locked the door. My hand hovered over the knob. The whisper came again. Closer. Almost beside my ear, do not lock it. I spun around. The room was empty. The shadows had not moved. But the air felt different. Denser. Almost alive. Pressing against my skin. I backed away from the door. Fumbling with the note still in my hand. Never leave a light on past 2 a.m., I read aloud. Feeling foolish. Yet the words rang with authority I couldn't explain. I looked at the lamp. For a moment. I thought I saw the shadows twist in response. Like they were waiting for my decision. Curiosity and fear battled inside me. I wanted to turn off the light. To obey the rule. But I also wanted to know what would happen if I didn't. That's when I heard the creak. Not the floor. Not the storm. A slow, deliberate creak from the hallway outside my door. It was close. Too close. I froze. Staring at the door. Half expecting to see something press its face against the glass. Or a hand reach in. Nothing appeared. Yet the sound persisted. Rhythmic. Purposeful. Like someone pacing just beyond the edge of vision. My chest tightened. I realized I had no idea who or what was out there. And the rules, those stupid, simple rules, suddenly felt like my only protection. I decided to test them. Just slightly. I leaned toward the lock. Just enough to feel the cool metal under my fingers. The whisper came again. More urgent this time. Almost angry. Do not lock it. Do not lock it. Do not. The final word cut off sharply. And in that instant, I felt the room shift. The shadows bent toward me faster than any natural movement should allow. I jerked my hand away. Stumbled back. Heart hammering. The lamp flickered. Casting grotesque shapes across the walls. The storm outside intensified. Rain hammering the roof like fists striking a coffin. The clock ticked closer to 2 a.m. My rational mind screamed. It's all nerves. Just a storm. Just a motel. A prank. Nothing more. Yet the shadows didn't agree. They pressed closer. Pulled lower. And I could swear I saw shapes forming. Humanoid. Leaning just above the floor. Reaching. I spent the next hour circling the room. Touching nothing. Keeping my distance from the door. Eyes fixed on the lamp. The whispers returned. Periodically. Indistinct. Insistent. Echoing around me in the empty space. Every time I thought I understood their pattern. The air shifted. Colder than before. And a new whisper began. By the time the storm began to wane, I realized something terrifying. Room 6 didn't just enforce the rules. It learned. Every hesitation. Every small act of curiosity or disobedience. Was logged. The room remembered. And it was preparing me. For the next stage. I understood then that survival depended not just on following the written instructions. But on interpreting them. Anticipating the silent consequences of every thoughtless move. I hadn't even begun to explore the other rules yet. The first 2 had been enough to terrify me. Into awareness. But I could feel more waiting. Creeping in the corners. Whispering between the flickers of the lamp. I knew, with a certainty that chilled my bones, breaking the next rule could cost me. More than fear. It could cost me my life. I didn't sleep. Not really. My eyes fluttered shut. For seconds at a time. But every creak. Every whisper from the shadows. Pulled me back into a waking nightmare. The storm outside raged on. A furious symphony of wind and rain. Hammering against the roof. Like a drumbeat counting down some dreadful rhythm I didn't yet understand. I stayed on the edge of the bed. Clutching the note to my chest. Trying to steady my shaking hands. The rules. Though simple. Were the only thing keeping me tethered to sanity. Do not lock the door from inside. Never leave the light on past 2 a.m. I had broken the first. Just slightly. Testing it. And survived. Barely. But I knew instinctively. The motel was watching. Waiting. For me to make another mistake. Hours passed. Shadows moved differently in the flickering lamplight. If I turned it on in fleeting moments, just to confirm the corners were still empty, I began to notice patterns. Subtle. Horrifying. In the shadows. Angles that shouldn't exist. Silhouettes that seemed to hover. Just out of alignment with the walls. My rational mind screamed at me. It's imagination. Exhaustion. A storm-induced isolation. But I could feel it. The motel wasn't just a building. It was aware. It remembered. And it punished. Around what must have been 3 a.m., I finally had to move. The bathroom called. I had no choice but to walk the short distance across the room. I took shallow steps. Eyes fixed on the floor. Trying not to glance at the walls. The whispers returned. Barely audible at first. Soft hisses. Like someone exhaling my name. Just beyond the edges of hearing. Do not. Do not. Do not. My stomach twisted. Fear mingled with curiosity. As if the building itself were teasing me. The bathroom mirror reflected nothing unusual. Yet the air felt thicker. Heavier. I splashed cold water on my face. And my reflection looked wrong. The eyes were mine. But the corners of my mouth twisted upward just slightly. A smirk I wasn't making. I froze. The rational side of my brain screamed, it's just steam. Just fatigue. But the shadows pressed closer in the reflection. Though I was alone. The rules whispered in my mind. I hadn't broken the second one yet, the light. I hadn't left it on past 2 a.m. But if I lingered, if I hesitated, would that be enough? Would curiosity force my failure? I returned to the bed. But the feeling of being watched didn't abate. Each flick of the curtain, each roll of thunder, seemed synchronized with my heartbeat. I tried to occupy myself. Turning the pages of a guidebook I had brought. Anything to keep my mind from spiraling. That's when I noticed it. Small scratches. On the inside of the door frame. Jagged. Uneven. At first, I thought they were old. But the closer I looked, the fresher they appeared. Almost as though someone, or something, had been clawing at the door just before I arrived. My pulse skyrocketed. The note didn't mention scratching. Yet instinctively, I understood. It was a rule to do not touch the door after midnight. I hadn't done it intentionally. But my curiosity had brought me too close. The scratches were evidence. The motel had taken note. A soft, dragging sound came from the hallway outside. Not the storm. Not the wind. Not the normal creaking. Something deliberate. Slow. Approaching. I couldn't see it. Couldn't confront it. But I could feel it. And it carried the same weight as the rules themselves, obey. Or pay. I clutched the note tighter. The words seemed to vibrate in my hands, do not lock the door from inside. Never leave the light on past 2 a.m. I whispered them aloud. A litany. Meant to anchor me to safety. Yet repeating them only seemed to provoke the air. The shadows shifted. Stretching unnaturally along the carpet. Pulling against the corners of the walls. Forming shapes. Vaguely humanoid. But impossibly long. I dared not look directly at them. Hours passed like this. I counted them in my mind. 1 tick. 2 tick. Though the clock on the nightstand its hands trembled. Slowed. Then jumped forward in jerks. That made no sense. I tried to focus on breathing. On grounding myself in reality. But each time I closed my eyes, I felt fingers brushing the back of my neck. Soft. But insistent. The whispers returned. Do not. Do not. Do not. By the time the storm began to wane, I realized something terrifying. Room 6 didn't just enforce the rules. It learned. Every hesitation, every small act of curiosity or disobedience, was logged. The room remembered. And it was preparing me for the next stage. I understood then that survival depended not just on following the written instructions, but on interpreting them, anticipating the silent consequences of every thoughtless move. I hadn't even begun to explore the other rules yet. The first two had been enough to terrify me into awareness. But I could feel more waiting, creeping in the corners, whispering between the flickers of the lamp. I knew with a certainty that chilled my bones, breaking the next rule could cost me more than fear. It could cost me my life. Morning came, though I didn't feel it. The storm had passed, leaving only the residual chill that clung to the walls. The sun tried to pierce the heavy curtains, but the room remained dim, shadowed, unwelcoming. I didn't move immediately. Not until I forced myself. The rules were still fresh in my mind. Do not lock the door from inside. Never leave the light on past 2 a.m. I needed to understand them, to study them, to survive. I got up slowly, each step deliberate, feet pressing lightly against the worn carpet. Listening. Always listening. And that's when I noticed them. The notes. Tucked in corners I hadn't seen before. Rule 3, written in the same jagged, urgent handwriting: if you hear someone whisper your name, pretend to be asleep. I shivered. The memory of last night's whispers came flooding back. I remembered my own curiosity. The way I had pressed against the lock. The way the shadows had reacted. I hadn't been asleep. I had been awake. Curious. And now, I understood. There was more than just the rules I had broken. The motel. It had been watching. Rule 4 appeared, scribbled under the bedside lamp: do not open drawers after midnight. Do not touch the bathroom mirror. I felt the hair on my arms stand on end. A bathroom mirror. A drawer. Every ordinary object in the room had become a potential threat. I looked around, carefully. The furniture seemed different. More threatening somehow. Shadows pooling at the edges. I tested the air. A cold draft moved along the floorboards. Carried a faint scent. Metallic. Like blood. Rule 5, etched into the wall behind the bed: never sit on the edge of the bed. Never place your feet on the floor after 3 a.m. I froze. The bed. My safe zone from last night. Suddenly a trap. I sank back against the headboard, trying to imagine how any of this could be real. Yet the fear was undeniable. Rule 6, faintly written beneath the light switch: do not look at the shadows directly. Do not speak aloud what you see. I swallowed hard. I had looked. I had spoken. I had survived. Barely. Rule 7 was the most disturbing. Scrawled across the closet door: do not close your eyes for more than 10 seconds at a time. Do not breathe too loudly. I laughed quietly, though it sounded hollow in the empty room. The rules were insane. And yet, I could feel their authority. Every word pressed against my mind. Every command seemed vital. I had survived the first night. But now, fully awake, the rules felt heavier. More demanding. Like chains slowly wrapping around me. Tightening. I moved cautiously toward the window. Pulled aside the curtain. The motel parking lot was empty. Nothing moved. Yet I could feel eyes on me. Watching from the walls. From the shadows. I turned back to the notes. And noticed one last scribble. Smaller. Almost hidden: do not question the rules. Do not ask why. I felt my stomach drop. I had questions. 1,000 of them. But instinct told me asking was dangerous. I spent the morning pacing. Every movement measured. Every glance calculated. Rule after rule pressed against my mind. A psychological weight I couldn't escape. By midday, I realized something terrifying. The motel didn't just punish mistakes. It observed patterns. It tested reactions. And now it was preparing me for the next stage. I had to obey. I had to follow each rule perfectly, or I would not survive the night. The first night had been a warning, a trial, and I had barely passed. Now, I would learn more. The rest of the rules, the hidden dangers, and what the motel demanded from me. I wasn't ready, but I had no choice. Room 6 had claimed me. The afternoon stretched on. Sunlight barely reached the corners of the room. Shadows remained stubbornly dark. Thick. Almost alive. I tried to focus on small tasks. Organizing my bag. Checking the bathroom. But every movement felt measured. As if the room itself were timing me. Curiosity tugged at me again. And I knew I shouldn't. But I couldn't help it. I reached for the drawer. The one rule explicitly forbade after midnight. My fingers brushed the handle. And a shiver ran down my spine. Almost warning me. But I opened it anyway. Inside. Nothing. Just some old towels. A rusted hairbrush. Relief washed over me. But it was fleeting. Because then I heard it. A soft thump. From the floor above. Or maybe inside the walls. A deliberate, slow rhythm. I froze. Rule 6 whispered in my mind, do not look at the shadows directly. Do not speak aloud what you see. I glanced around. Shadows moved independently of the light. Stretching. Shrinking. Pulling unnaturally near the corners. My breath caught. I had broken the rule. Or at least, I had challenged it. The thumping grew louder. Echoing through the floorboards. A presence. Testing me. Waiting. I returned the drawer handle. Closing it softly. Hoping that was enough. It wasn't. The lamp flickered violently. A shadow shot across the wall. Tall. Thin. Bending at impossible angles. I took a step back. But my foot caught the edge of the rug. A soft tear in the fabric. And then. Silence. Too quiet. The air thickened. Heavy. Pressing against my skin. Chilling my bones. I realized I had made another mistake. Rule 5, never sit on the edge of the bed. Never place your feet on the floor after 3 a.m. I had sat. I had touched the floor. My body had forgotten the rules in a moment of distraction. And now. The motel responded. I could feel the walls vibrating slightly. Subtle at first. Then stronger. The floorboards groaned as if alive. I staggered toward the bed, clutching my chest. Trying to catch my breath. Then came the whisper. Soft. Urgent. Impossible to locate, do not. Do not. Do not. I pressed my hands over my ears. But the sound seeped through. Through bone. Through thought. Panic rose in my throat. My eyes darted around the room. Shadows twisted in response. Forming shapes that were almost human. Almost familiar. But grotesque. I wanted to scream. But Rule 6 warned me, do not speak aloud what you see. My mouth went dry. I swallowed hard. I could feel my pulse in my ears. The lamp flickered again. Then steadied. But the shadow lingered. Near the ceiling. Stretching downward. I forced myself to focus. One rule at a time. One breath at a time. Rule 3. If you hear someone whisper your name, pretend to be asleep. I dropped to the bed. Flattened myself against the mattress. Eyes wide open, yet pretending. Pretending nothing was happening. The whisper came again. Closer this time. Right above my ear. Do not sleep. Yet. I froze. Heart hammering. Fingers digging into the sheets. The room shifted. A low hum filled the space. rumbling beneath my feet. I realized then. The motel was punishing me. For curiosity. For hesitation. For every moment I had not obeyed perfectly. I stayed perfectly still. Counting silently. Waiting. Breathing lightly. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time had no meaning here. Then. Silence. The shadows receded slightly. The whisper faded. And the air lightened. I dared to open my eyes. But the memory of the punishment remained. Etched into my nerves. A lesson I would not forget. I understood something vital. Following the rules wasn't enough. I had to anticipate. Predict. Obey before the motel demanded it. Every day. Every night. Rule 7. 8. 9. They were coming. And soon. The next infraction might not be forgivable. I sat at the edge of the bed. Hands trembling. Trying to steady my mind. The motel had claimed me. And it would not let go. Curiosity was dangerous. Disobedience deadly. And the rules. The rules were survival. I had survived my first infraction. But I knew the price for the next one would be higher. Much higher. Night came again. But the darkness was different this time. Thicker. Heavier. The storm had passed. Yet a low hum vibrated through the walls. A subtle, insistent pressure. As if the motel were breathing. I tried to stay calm. Rule after rule played through my mind. Each one a lifeline. Each one a chain. I stayed near the bed. Clutching the notes. Every movement measured. Every breath shallow. And then I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye. A figure. Tall. Thin. Shadows stretching unnaturally along its limbs. But it moved. Impossibly fast. I froze. Heart hammering. Fingers clutching the edge of the mattress. The whispers returned. Close. Almost inside my head. Do not. Look. Do not. Move. I obeyed. Barely. Yet the figure didn't vanish. It lingered. Shifting. Twisting. Always at the edge of vision. I realized something terrifying. The motel wasn't just punishing disobedience. It was studying me. Learning my reactions. Anticipating my fears. The lamp flickered violently. Shadows on the walls stretched higher. Twisting into shapes I couldn't name. Rule 6 warned me. Do not look at the shadows directly. Do not speak aloud what you see. But my mind betrayed me. Images of twisted forms invaded my thoughts. Hallucinations. Or reality. I couldn't tell. I tried to focus on my breathing. Counting silently. 1. 2. 3. The air grew colder. Heavier. Pressing against my chest. I felt something brush my shoulder. Soft. Insistent. But when I turned, nothing was there. Rule 3 echoed in my mind. If you hear someone whisper your name, pretend to be asleep. I lay flat on the bed. Eyes wide open. Heart pounding. Pretending. The whispers came again. Closer this time. Almost directly behind my ear. Do not sleep. Yet. I froze. Terror froze me in place. Then. A shadow moved across the ceiling. Stretching downward. Forming shapes that looked almost human. Almost familiar. My stomach twisted. Fear gnawed at my bones. I tried to obey the rules, one at a time. Focusing on survival. But the motel. It was relentless. The floorboards groaned beneath invisible footsteps. The walls vibrated. Soft hisses filled the air. Whispers. Growing louder. Rule 7. Etched in my mind, do not close your eyes for more than 10 seconds at a time. Do not breathe too loudly. I dared not blink. Dared not exhale fully. Every movement measured. The shadows pulsed. shifting toward me, bending impossibly, forming shapes that made no sense. And then I heard it. A soft, deliberate tap. Right outside the door. I hadn't locked it. But someone, or something, was there. Watching. Waiting. I stayed still. Silent. Heart hammering. Fingers clutching the sheets. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time had no meaning. Then the whisper, "Curiosity is costly." I swallowed hard. The words vibrated in my chest. Fear twisting my stomach into knots. The shadows receded slightly. But the memory remained. Etched into my mind. A warning I would not forget. I realized then. The motel didn't just punish mistakes. It shaped them. Tested them. And it was preparing me. For the greater rules. For the deeper traps. I had survived the first night of infractions. But now the stakes were higher. The shadows were learning. The whispers were teaching. And my mind was beginning to unravel. Rule 8. 9. 10. They were coming. And I wasn't ready. Yet I had no choice. The motel had claimed me. And I would not escape. Curiosity was dangerous. Disobedience deadly. And survival depended on anticipating the next test. I pressed my face into the pillow. Trembling. Trying to calm my racing heart. But I knew one thing for certain. I was no longer alone. And room 6 had eyes everywhere. The next day, I finally left the room. Careful. Measured. Every step deliberate. The hallway was empty. Silent. But not peaceful. I could feel eyes. Watching. Waiting. Downstairs. I saw someone else. A man, hunched, muttering to himself. Eyes darting nervously. Clutching a crumpled piece of paper. He looked as terrified as I felt. Or maybe more. I wanted to speak. To ask if he knew the rules. But my mouth went dry. I remembered Rule 6, do not speak aloud what you see. The man froze. Head snapped toward me. Eyes wide. And then, he ran. Disappeared into the stairwell. Vanishing before I could react. I realized then. I wasn't alone. Others had come here. And they had succumbed. Or were still trapped. I wandered the lobby. Looking for clues. For someone who might explain. But the receptionist. She remained hidden behind the counter. Eyes down. Pen scratching. I glanced at the notices on the walls. Faded and yellowed. Some small handwritten warnings. Do not linger near the elevator past midnight. Do not follow sounds in the hall. The rules were everywhere. Written, whispered, hidden. And they governed everything. I returned to room 6. But it felt different. Stronger. Aware of my absence. The shadows had multiplied. Pulling thicker in the corners. Stretching across the floor. Rule 9 appeared, faintly scrawled on the inside of the closet, do not trust your senses. Do not trust your memory. I felt my stomach twist. Already, my mind had begun to play tricks on me. Images I hadn't seen. Voices I hadn't heard. Flashes in the corners of my eyes. I began to question everything. The notes. The shadows. Even my own hands. Then I heard them. Other whispers. Not mine alone. Voices of those trapped. Echoing from the walls. From the shadows. Do not. Do not. Do not. I pressed myself against the wall. Heart hammering. Breathing shallow. Somewhere behind the wallpaper. I swear I saw a figure moving. Hunched, crawling. Waiting. I hadn't been the first. And I wouldn't be the last. Rule 10, hidden beneath the dresser, do not let hope linger. Do not expect rescue. I understood then. There was no escape. No help. Only the rules. The motel. The shadows. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. I had lost all sense of time. And then the whispers changed. Different. Closer. More urgent. Do not break the rules. Do not falter. Do not. I realized the motel was testing me. Pushing me to limits I didn't know existed. The shadows moved faster now. Reacting to my heartbeat. To my thoughts. To my fears. I had survived the first infractions. But now the stakes had escalated. The motel. The room. The rules. Were no longer just warnings. They were demands. And I knew, deep down, that failure was fatal. I backed into the corner. Trying to make myself small. Invisible. The shadows receded slightly. But the whispers lingered. Echoing around the room. And I understood something terrifying, the motel didn't just punish. It shapes. It molds. It feeds on fear. And obedience. I was part of it now. Part of its experiment. Its endless cycle of terror. Curiosity was lethal. Disobedience fatal. And survival depended on absolute, unwavering attention to the rules. I sat there for what felt like hours. Hands trembling. Eyes darting. I had to obey. Had to anticipate. Had to survive. Because I had seen what happened to those who didn't. And I knew. I was not safe. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt something standing over me. Watching. Breathing. The whispers had stopped. But the silence. The silence was worse. It pressed down on me like weight. Like air too thick to breathe. My mind started to break under it. The boundaries between dream and reality blurred. I couldn't tell which was worse. The lamp flickered. Once. Twice. And I remembered Rule 2. If the light flickers twice, do not move. Do not speak. So I didn't. Not at first. But fear. Fear does strange things. It tricks you into testing the edges of your prison. It whispers, what if the rules are lies? I waited. And waited. The flicker stopped. I exhaled. Too soon. The shadows shifted. Slowly. Deliberately. Crawling across the floor like spilled ink. I felt the air move. A rush of cold, unnatural wind. And then, the door creaked open. It was the man from the lobby. Or what used to be him. His skin hung in folds. Eyes sunken. Mouth open too wide. He staggered inside. Muttering under his breath. Do not speak aloud what you see. Do not speak aloud what you see. He looked right at me. And his eyes. They weren't human anymore. Empty. Hollow. Reflecting nothing but the light of the dying bulb. I whispered, what happened to you? He froze. Then screamed. Not a sound of pain. But of something breaking. A voice twisted into static. Into a sound that didn't belong in this world. The lights went out. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The darkness swallowed everything. But the sound continued, a wet, choking gasp. And then silence. When the lights flickered back on, he was gone. No blood. No body. Only a faint smell. Like burnt metal and rain. Something inside me broke. I wanted to run. To scream. To escape. But where would I go? The hallway led nowhere. The windows showed nothing but endless night. Even the air felt false, like it wasn't meant for breathing. So I sat. And thought. And waited for morning. When dawn came, if you could call that pale, sickly light dawn, I gathered my things. But there was nowhere to go. No one to call. The motel phone was dead. The road outside vanished into fog. That's when I found something new. A folded piece of paper slipped under the door. My name written in dark ink. Inside, one sentence. Handwritten. Shaky. Uneven. Rule 11, when you think it's over, stay. Leaving is what feeds it. I stared at it for minutes. Heart hammering. Mind racing. I had been planning to run. But now, I couldn't. Because every rule, every warning, had been real. Every test had been deliberate. I was being watched. Controlled. Observed. Every action, every decision, led to another trap. And I was beginning to understand, the motel didn't just want obedience. It wanted devotion. It wanted me to believe in it. To accept the rules as truth. To surrender to the logic of its madness. I looked around the room. The wallpaper pulsed softly, like veins under skin. The floor breathed. And on the mirror, written in condensation, one final message: do you understand now? My hands shook. I couldn't tell if I'd written it. Or if it was asking me. Either way, I whispered the only answer that felt true. Yes. And the lamp went out. When the lamp went out, I didn't move, couldn't. The darkness was total. The kind that eats sound. The kind that breathes. I heard the hum again. That low, pulsing vibration running through the walls. Through the floor. Through me. It wasn't electricity. It was alive. The motel. It wasn't a building. It was a body. And I was inside it. I tried to stand, but the air thickened. Each breath heavier than the last. I stumbled toward the door, gasping. Clawing at the knob. Locked. Of course. Rule 4 flashed through my mind: once the lights go out, remain still until dawn. But there was no dawn coming. No safety waiting. Just that vibration. Growing louder. Faster. The walls began to move. Slowly at first. Then pulsing. I pressed myself against the corner, shaking. And then a voice. Familiar. Calm. Too calm. It was the receptionist. But it wasn't coming from the hallway. It came from the vent. From the walls. You shouldn't have broken the rules, she whispered. They were written to keep you alive. Her tone changed. Soft, almost kind. Do you want to see why? The floorboards cracked open. Just slightly. Enough for light to seep through. A faint, pulsing red glow. I wanted to look away. But I didn't. I leaned closer. And saw movement beneath the floor. Shapes. Human shapes. Hundreds of them. Bodies. Twisting, writhing, faces half-formed. Like melted wax molded into people. Their mouths opened in unison. And I heard every voice at once. Do not break the rules. Do not speak aloud what you see. Do not trust your memory. They were all here. The guests. The ones who came before. Those who broke the rules. Their voices merged into a single sound, a droning, endless chant. I fell backward. Clutching my ears. Screaming. But the sound didn't stop. It echoed inside my skull. Inside my blood. Then. Silence again. I looked up. The room was normal. The bed. The lamp. The walls. Everything back in place. But I knew better now. Room 6 wasn't a place. It was a mouth. And I had been swallowed. I walked to the mirror. Slowly. Cautiously. My reflection stared back. But the eyes. They weren't mine. They blinked out of sync. Moved half a second slower. Then the reflection smiled. I didn't. You understand now, it said softly. The voice. My own. But layered. Multiplied. I whispered back, trembling, what are you? The reflection tilted its head. Rule 12, it said. Never ask who writes the rules. And then it laughed. The glass shattered. Not from impact. But from sound, from the vibration inside the room. Shards rained down, cutting my hands. Each piece reflected something different. A hallway. A door. 1,000 versions of room 6. Each one empty. Waiting. I backed away. Bleeding. Panicking. The walls pulsed again. And the whisper returned. Stay. I pressed my palms to my ears. Screamed until my throat burned. Let me go. The room obeyed. The floor cracked wide open. Swallowing the bed. The dresser. The walls. And me. I fell, not down, but through. Through layers of sound. Of memory. Of rules. Voices spoke all at once. Overlapping. Endless. Never open the door after midnight. Do not trust your senses. Do not break the rules. Each one burned into my mind. Until they weren't rules anymore. They were instinct. Survival. Truth. When I landed, I was back in room 6. But not the same room. Older. Colder. Deeper. A new note on the desk. Congratulations. You understand now. Please, help the next guest. The paper trembled in my hands. Fresh ink appearing at the bottom. You will tell them the rules. You will keep them alive. You will watch them break. I wanted to scream. To tear it apart. But my voice. It wasn't mine anymore. I felt the walls breathing around me. Felt the hum settle into rhythm with my heartbeat. I looked at the door. And saw a new key hanging there. Room 6 was ready for the next guest. And I was part of it now. Time no longer mattered. The motel didn't follow clocks. It measured obedience. Fear. Curiosity. I walked the halls. Each step deliberate. Every shadow watched. Every whisper tracked. The rules. They had become instinct. Second nature. Impossible to forget. I found the man from the lobby. Or rather, what remained. A twisted husk in the corner. Eyes hollow. Mouth open in an endless scream. I turned away. Couldn't help him. Couldn't save him. The shadows pulsed again. Darker now? Shifting as if alive. I reached room 6. The door. Waiting. A new key in the lock. I understood. The motel didn't just trap people. It fed on them. It shaped them. It used them to teach the next arrivals. And now, I was the teacher. I opened the door. The room smelled of cold air and old wood. A guest sat on the bed. Eyes wide. Fear radiating from every movement. I handed them a folded piece of paper. The rules. The survival instructions. 7. 10. All of them. I whispered softly, follow them. Every word. Do not question. Do not hesitate. The guest nodded. Shivering. The motel hummed around us. Shadows creeping along the walls. I watched them read the rules. Every line sinking into their mind. Every warning preparing them for what was to come. And then, the room changed. Floorboards shifted. Walls pulsed. Shadows twisting like living creatures. I had learned the final truth. Obedience wasn't enough. Survival required surrender. Absolute submission. The guest glanced at me. Eyes full of terror and hope. I smiled. Or at least, I thought I did. But my reflection in the mirror. It wasn't mine. It never had been. The motel whispered in unison, voices overlapping, you belong here now. Teach. Observe. Survive. I felt my mind fracture. Pieces of myself folding into the walls, the floor, the shadows. And then, calm. A terrible, hollow calm. I understood that I would never leave. That the rules. The motel. Room 6, had claimed me entirely. I looked at the new guest. And spoke the final instruction, the rules are real. They will save you. If you obey. But once you understand. You are theirs. I watched as fear sank in. As comprehension dawned. I turned toward the mirror. The reflection smiled back. Not me. Never me. The motel hummed. Alive. Eternal. And I was just another rule to enforce. A keeper of fear. A guide for the next unfortunate soul. Room 6 waited. Always. For the next guest. And I would be here. Forever. The motel is silent now. Or maybe I've just learned how to listen. There's a rhythm beneath the quiet. Like a heartbeat. Deep. Measured. Endless. Each room breathes in its own way. The wallpaper sighs. The carpet hums. Even the air carries whispers. I used to think they were ghosts. That every voice belonged to someone who didn't make it out. But now I know better. They're rules. Echoes of those who broke them. Trapped in repetition. Forever warning the next. I pass by room 3. It's closed now. It always stays closed. Something inside scratches softly, a reminder of what happens when curiosity wins. Room 5 hums like a machine. Always cold. Always awake. Sometimes, if I linger too long, I can hear crying through the vent. I reach the lobby. The bell on the counter rings itself. Once. Twice. As if greeting me. The register lies open. Names etched in faded ink. Each crossed out. Each replaced by another. And there. At the very bottom. My own name. Written neatly. Boldly. Underlined twice. The pen still rests beside it. Waiting for the next signature. I close the book. Carefully. Because I know what comes next. Outside the window, headlights appear. A new car. Pulling in slow. Engine stalling like it's hesitant to stop. The door opens. A traveler steps out. Looking tired. Lost. The kind of person who won't notice the missing stars in the sky. The kind who just wants a bed for the night. I watch as they approach the door. The bell jingles. The air shifts. I straighten the counter. Wipe away the dust. And wait. They'll ask for a room. I'll hand them a key. And, of course, the paper. The rules. I'll watch them read. Their eyes moving faster with every line. Their breathing shallow. Their heartbeat loud. Then I'll say it again. The same way I was told. Follow them carefully. Every one of them. Don't ask questions. The traveler nods. They always do. And as they walk away, I whisper, soft, low, like a prayer, may the rules keep you safe. Or claim you quickly. The motel hums. Alive again. Hungry. Somewhere, deep in its halls, a door creaks open on its own. And the cycle begins anew. A soft wind passes. A single neon light flickers outside, vacancy. But beneath it, just barely visible, a word carved into the sign's base. Forever. The hum returns. Low. Endless. The story closes. But the rules remain.